My name is Frans Cronje and I'm the director of the IRR. We're a think tank and advocacy organisation that work very hard to promote South Africa's success as a fundamentally free and open and prosperous society under the rule of law. Since our inception in the 1920s, we've tracked in a great degree of detail the country's social, economic and political evolution. And a few years ago we commenced a project inside the IRR that we call the Hope Project. And the idea of the Hope Project is to find the evidence of South Africa's success over the past 20 years, in a sense to identify the evidence of the democratic dividend that since becoming a fundamentally free society in the mid-1990s, we've also become a very much better society. Now there's no doubt, if you read many of our reports, that South Africa's got particularly serious economic and social problems in areas from crime to education, in areas of the economy, in terms of levels of investment comparable to other emerging markets, and the country's economic growth rate. We do have serious social and economic challenges to confront. But we also find as analysts a lot of evidence of progress that's been made in the country. And sometimes we get accused of trying to have it both ways. Our critics say, how can you guys on the one hand produce such a volume of critical material, but then also go out and start producing material in the progress that has been made? My experience and that of my senior colleagues is that the good analysts on South Africa are not those that are tempted to walk through the doors of the Rainbow Nation or the race war. In a sense, those two outcomes are probably the two outcomes that will never happen for the country. The truth is somewhere in the middle, and good analysts are those that are able to navigate the apparent contradictions without being too tempted to reach conclusions of true or false, or absolute findings on whether it has all been a tremendous success or a complete failure. We're about to release the latest report in the Hope series, which looks at living conditions in South Africa. And we're able to find a lot of indicators that should get a lot of South Africans and people who watch us from abroad to think differently about the country. Service delivery, for example, as we've long maintained, has been more successful than many of the critics of the government maintain. For example, for every shack newly erected after 1994, we can find evidence that 10 formal houses were built in the country. 20 years ago, less than 6 out of 10 families had access to electricity, and that indicator has now increased to more than 9 out of 10 families. The number of people in the country with a job has doubled over the past 20 years, so the idea of 2 decades of jobless growth is largely nonsense. We track living standards in terms of data that we call LSMs, or living standard measures, and these show that just over the past 10 to 12 years we've seen a significant outflow of people from the lowest third of the living standard spectrum into mid and higher level categories. Education has largely been a very problematic area of policy, and a lot of children are denied a better future because of the quality of government schools. But we're able to find in areas of higher education examples of progress. One of the most stunning is that in the early 1990s there were 40 whites getting a degree in engineering for every 1 black graduate, but by last year there were twice as many black graduates as white, even though the number of white graduates had not declined over the past 20 years. We think the Hope series is an important resource for people to get a more balanced and accurate perspective of South Africa's progress over the past 20 years. By no means does the Hope series maintain or hold the line that South Africa is a country without problems, but we think it's justified at times to highlight the successes alone, so that South Africans can reflect on those and be energized to build on them for the country over the decade ahead to reach its great potential.